Hello, my name's Paul McIntyre and I'm the Senior Instructor for the National Driving Centre. We're here to help you with this short video for your PCV CPC Module 4 practical walk-around checks. This test will last about half an hour and will be conducted with a DVSA examiner. Because we're not sure what questions you're going to get, this video will help you work through all of the answers and the questions. So the first question we're going to walk through is weights of the vehicle. First of all, the question we're going to get is where would we find the unladen weight of this vehicle? So it's always written on the outside of a PCV vehicle, and for this one, it's written just here. Okay, so this is the unladen weight, 7860 kilograms. The next question we could get is what's the approximate weight of our passengers? So he could ask anything here, but as we know from our theory guide, 15 passengers really equals 1 tonne. So we can kind of work it down there from there. So if he was to ask us for say 53 passengers, we can kind of round that up to say 3.53 tonnes. So as long as we remember that 15 passengers equals a tonne, we can kind of break it down from there. The next question could be suitcases. Well, again, the approximate weight of a suitcase would be about 22 kilograms. So we can roughly break it down from there, and 45 suitcases would equal a tonne. The next one is going to be fuel. Fuel's the easy one. So 100 litres of fuel, 100 kilograms. 200 litres of fuel, 200 kilograms. So that would be a nice way to remember that one. The next question is how could we help elderly or disabled people onto this vehicle? Well, the first thing we're going to do is park nice and close to the curb so that they don't have to step too far. And then we're going to offer reasonable assistance. So if they want help, I can come out and help them onto the vehicle. And once those elderly or disabled people are sitting down on the vehicle, we'll make sure their walking frames or any sticks don't become a hazard to any other passenger on the vehicle. So we'll make sure our gangways remain clear from any obstruction. As we work our way down the vehicle then, we're going to be thinking about the disabled wheelchair. Now this is where things become a little bit more tricky because we have to send our ramp out and now open the doors. So we're going to park again close to the curb. We're then going to observe that left mirror, making sure that area is clear prior to the deployment of the ramp. We're then going to extend the ramp and open the doors. We'll then bring that wheelchair onto the vehicle, and this is where we're going to have to position that wheelchair in an appropriate place. So now we can bring that wheelchair into the specific place. We're going to be bringing that wheelchair reversed onto what we call the bulkhead. Okay, so the wheelchair is going to be sat here facing this way. We're going to explain to the examiner the reason we're doing this. So in the event of heavy braking, that wheelchair can't go anywhere. Okay, and the customer is going to be nice and comfortable and nice and safe. We'll make sure if they've got a seatbelt, that their seatbelt is done up, and making sure any braking systems on the vehicle are on. So now that disabled person is in the vehicle, now we're going to need to close the doors. So keeping our good observation using our mirrors, or we could be using our CCTV system, making sure the area is clear. We're going to then close the doors and bring the ramp back in, making sure it's stowed away correctly. Any warning devices have gone out and making sure it's packed away where it needs to go. Then we're going to be thinking about the way in which we drive. So with smooth acceleration, progressive braking, and thinking about the cornering, nice and smooth and steady, giving our passengers a nice, comfortable ride. So our next question is going to be, how do we check the bus in the morning for passenger care and comfort? Quite an in-depth question, this one. And the key thing about this one is walk through. If you try and stand still and answer this, it becomes very difficult. So the easiest thing is walk through and actually demonstrate. So the first thing we're going to check, well, the first thing we come across is our grab rails. So we'll make sure they're nice and clean, they're sturdy, they're not damaged in any way. And obviously on this bus, you can see there are a lot of grab rails on this vehicle. So it would take a little bit of time to work your way through the bus. Normally when you get about halfway, that examiner could say, okay, I'm happy, carry on with the rest of the test. So now we'll go on to our next bit. The next thing we're going to come across is our seats. Again, quite a lot of checks to be doing on our seats now. So our first check to do is going to be our seat belt. Now we're thinking a lot of these red buses don't have seat belts, but this PCV Module 4 test is for coach as well. So we've always thinking about the answers for coaches. So we're going to be checking our seat belts. So first of all, we're going to bring it out all the way, making sure the webbing is nice and clean and clear. It's not split or frayed in any way. We'll plug it in, making sure it's working, give it a good tug, making sure it's sturdy, and then it releases and spools back. Then we're going to check our anchor points, making sure the seat itself is bolted to the floor. There's no point having a fantastic seat if the seat is loose and could come off. Once we do that, we're going to check every single seat. Again, making sure they're not damaged, making sure they're clean, they're tidy, there's no sharp objects, there's no chewing gum, oil or spills, making sure everything is nice and clean for our passengers and their comfort. Next thing, we're going to carry on walking through the vehicle. So we'll test our bells, making sure the bells are working, making sure they're doing their job. And we're going to make sure, again, our gangways are clean and clear, free from any trips, spills or hazards. We're going to keep walking our way through the bus, and we'll make sure our intercom is working, making sure we can speak to our customers if there's any delays or any issues with the vehicle that we need to inform them of. We'll make sure our CCTV is working, making sure we can observe our passengers, everyone's nice and safe. Internal lighting is nice and working. Obviously it's daylight now, but we could go into a night shift, so making sure all our lighting is working. We're then going to carry on working our way down the vehicle again, checking our grab rails, checking our seats, making sure everything is nice and safe, making sure all our emergency exits can be opened and closed and they're all working as well. Then we're going to continue working our way down, again checking all our handrails, making sure everything's nice and clear, and then we must check that back door. So we're going to open the back door, making sure it opens, and then making sure it closes in that secured position. Obviously we need to check our back emergency exits. Now we can't open this, so we'll make sure our hammer is there, the brake glass hammer. Obviously we want to make sure that that's there, just in case the vehicle is on its side. We can then exit through the rear glass. We're also going to check our first aid kit and our fire extinguisher, making sure they're there, they're in date, their checks have been carried out. Obviously we have 2 fire extinguishers on this vehicle. This one for the driver, and we've got one in the engine compartment. Now we can't set that one off because it's an automatic, but again, making sure our service dates are there and it's ready to be used if necessary. Remember, like we said at the beginning of this question, always thinking about coach. So passenger care and comfort, we're also going to be thinking about our luggage areas, making sure their passengers can store all their luggage. We're thinking about our kitchen and toilet facility, making sure they're clean and ready to be used. So our next question is, how do we ensure our passengers remain safe? Now this could be worded as a scenario. In other words, we're returning from, say, Liverpool, what checks would be carried out? So similar to our passenger care and comfort checks, again, making sure the gangways are clear, making sure our seats are nice and clean and tidy, making sure that any luggage is stowed away correctly. The most important thing of all now is our passenger manifest. So making sure we do our head count. If it's a ticket service, we'll make sure those passengers have tickets and that the same ones are getting on or off. Or if we're collecting new passengers, again, we're collecting the correct passengers. Passenger care and comfort, it kind of echoes onto this question. So again, just thinking about the same things. Our lighting, our speakers, our CCTV, anything that we need to help with those passengers get on and off the vehicle. Our gangways are clear, our ramp systems are working, and obviously emergency exits at all times. Our next question is, how do we ensure our vehicle has had the correct safety checks? Very important question, this one. So obviously our fault finding records, making sure all our pre-operational checks are carried out. So we could go through our back dates, making sure any faults that have been found have been rectified. Then we need to make sure, as we do our daily walk around check, there's no leaks on the ground. We're making sure we've got the correct fluids, we've got enough fluids. So this could be means of diesel or oil or lubricants or coolants, making sure everything is up to date. Making sure we're using the correct grade of fuel. We could do this with the owner's manual or records for the vehicle. Our next question is going to be, how do we inspect the vehicle for drugs and illegal immigrants? A very important question. If we get this one wrong, it can get very expensive. So again, this can be worded 2 ways with this question. He could build a scenario. So he could say, we're returning from the continent, what checks would be carried out? So first of all, let's think about our drugs and illegal immigrants. Now, there is no wrong answer. We need to inspect this vehicle top to bottom. So a challenging one to do this, and we have to do it. Again, you try and stand still and talk your way through it, it's too challenging, we forget a lot of areas. So first of all, we'll start from the outside and work our way in. The critical rule with this question is, if it can be opened, we must open it. If it can't be opened, then we'll inspect for suspicious activity. For instance, the mirror. Well, we can't open the mirror, it would be impossible to do so. So what we're going to do again is look for suspicious activity. Are there any pry marks around it? Has anyone tried to crack it or open it? Is there any gaffer tape or anything like this? We could do the same around the lenses. Again, has anyone tried to open the lenses, stash anything behind there? So if it can be opened, we'll open it. If not, we're inspecting for this area around here. Then we're going to move on to around the wheels and tyres, having a good look up into the wheel arch, again making sure there's no signs of contraband, any cable ties or gaffer tape where someone's tried to hide anything, having a good look around the front of the vehicle underneath, and having a good inspection around the area. As we work down, again, checking our bolts here, making sure no one's tried to open these bolts. There's no signs of gouging out or anything like this. As we work down, again, around our doors, the seals, any rubbers, there's no signs of prying open or anything like that. Around the ramp is nice and clean and tidy. Another rear tyre, another look. Again, getting very involved with this question, having a good look underneath the vehicle, really getting involved with this one. It's a very active question, this. As we come to the rear of the vehicle, we'll have a look at our intake section. Again, it's not been tried to open up, there's no pry marks. And then we're going to come to the rear. Lots of areas to check around here. Again, lights and lenses, well, we can't open them. So again, we're just looking for suspicious activity. And then we're going to open our rear hatch. As we open our rear hatch, we can then have a good inspection around the engine bay. Again, a big, vast area, looking for any signs of contraband, any cable ties or any systems like that. Again, people, we're always looking for the pair, always looking for drugs and always looking for people. So there's no signs of any suspicious activity. No one's tried to hide anything in these sections. As we close it, we're then securing it, making sure it's secured, ready for travel. We're going to keep walking around. I'm going to have a little look up the exhaust system. Again, there's no coat hangers or signs of suspicious activity where there's drugs or packages stuffed up the exhaust. As we keep making our way around, lights and lenses again, no suspicious activity. There's no signs of gouging or anything like that. Then we can open our fuel cell. So we can open our little fuel cap here and have a good look inside. Again, there's no bags or any suspicious activity around this area. Then we come to our coolant cap. Now be careful here, because we don't want to go opening the coolant cap, especially if the vehicle's been running, because we know it's pressurized and it could be hot. So again, I'm just going to carry out a visual inspection, making sure it's not been tampered with. I'll then close that and we can have a look at our oil system. Again, there's no suspicious activity. Again, be careful if the vehicle's been running, because this could be hot. Making sure this is secured, making sure any hatches around the venting area is nice and secured. We can open our back doors, again making sure there's no signs of suspicious activity, any cable ties or bags or anything suspicious that shouldn't be there. We're going to continue to work around the vehicle, again up into the arches, making sure there's nothing suspicious, no dangerous equipment, and obviously we need to look onto the roof of the vehicle. Well, how are we going to do that? I can't climb on top there, so again I'm just going to step away from the vehicle and try and have a good look on the roof, making sure that there's no suspicious sellotapes attached to the vehicle, or there's no signs of people. Obviously, if I had a mirror on a stick, I could use that as well. As we work down the side of the vehicle, again we come across our next wheel and tyre, so another good look around the wheel and tyre, really getting involved with this question. A good look under the vehicle, and then we can open our front canopy here. So along this one, a little twist catch and a push button. Nothing too special under here. We've got our batteries, so a big vast cavity under the side of the bus here. So again, having a good look around this area, around the air tanks, again making sure nothing suspicious. Then we'll secure that back, again making sure it's nice and secured, ready for travel. More lights and lenses and mirrors, again no suspicious activity, making sure everything's secured. Around the front, lights and lenses, again no suspicious activity where pry marks or anything silly like that, someone's tried to open it up. A good look under the front section. Once we're happy the outside has been checked, we're then going to make our way inside the bus. So now making our way onto the vehicle, again lots of places to check here. Again the same rules, if it can be opened, we will open it. If it can't be opened, we'll inspect for suspicious activity. So as we come onto the vehicle, obviously lots of cavities around the driver's area. So we'll have a good inspection around the seat, around the floor. Again, suspicious activity, making sure it's all clean and tidy. We've got a lot of compartments on these vehicles, and again, thinking about a coach, you would have a lot of vehicle hiding places. So we need to be checking up here, opening these canopies, having a good inspection around the area, making sure again no suspicious activity, and then making sure they're secured, and if we need to lock them, we'll lock them. We'll do the same for the cavities up and over the doors, and then we'll make our way through the bus. So again, as we make our way through the bus, we're inspecting around the grab rails, again suspicious activity, around the seats, around any suspicious damage or that could be cut, any cuts into the seat that need to be checked and inspected. We'll check our lights and making sure there's no area around the speakers, making sure everything is nice and clean and tidy. So let's imagine we have searched this bus top to bottom. We'll now think about that returning from the continent question, and this is a real good one. It's very easy to pick up marks for this. So returning from the continent, we have searched this bus top to bottom. There are no drugs and there are no illegal immigrants. He might then ask, are there any other checks we need to carry out? We really need to think about that passenger manifest or our head count. So obviously our passengers that are coming back onto the vehicle, we've got the correct passengers. If it's a ticket service, again, making sure they've got their tickets. And we've got the correct people on for this next forward journey. Our next question is going to be moving on to fire, okay? And the question we're going to get here is, where could the fire start? Again, similar to that drugs and illegal immigrants, there is no wrong answer. But if we stand still, it's a very challenging question to get. So again, walk around the vehicle. It's going to help you remember these little places and these little areas. So we'll start from the outside. So where could the fire start? Well, there's no wrong answer. Around the lights, around the lenses, we could have short circuits or open circuits causing a fire. We need to check around our wheels and tyres. This can get very hot when we're driving. Down the sides of the vehicle, we've got a lot of electronics running down the side of this vehicle, especially around the doors. More axles, more tyres, more brakes. Again, get very hot when we're driving. As we come to the rear of the vehicle, well, around the engine compartment, again, getting very hot and a lot of electronics and fuel. So we've got the fuel system, the transmission, the exhaust system. Again, more lights back here as well that we need to keep an eye on. As we continue to walk around the vehicle, around our radiators and cooling system, again, getting very hot on these vehicles. As we keep working our way around the vehicle, again, more tyres. Well, we could definitely have fires around our tyres and braking system, especially when they get hot. Again, more wheels, more tyres, and then we've got our batteries, okay, very common places. We want to make sure our electrical equipment is nice and safe, nice and secure, so making sure the batteries can't move, they're nice and secure, and this is a very common place for fires to start. Once we've done that, we could move on to the vehicle itself. And again, where could the fire start? Well, around the driver's compartment, around the electronics of the vehicle. So there's lots of electronics, fuse boxes and relays. As we make our way through the vehicle, making sure that any fire systems are working. So we've got fire extinguishers, they're there, and like we said, they're in date. Again, thinking about that kitchen and toilet from the coach. So again, any electrical systems around the kitchen or the toilet facility, they're nice and clean and there's no fires that can start there as well. Our next question is going to be, if we were driving down the road and we noticed a fire. So if we're driving down the road and we see smoke coming out of the vehicle, the first thing we're going to do is pull over when safe to do so. So getting our vehicle over to the side. We're then going to turn our engine off and turning our isolators off. Very important answer, this one. Obviously, turning our engine off could kill any fuel systems, making sure there's no fuel being pumped around to the engine that could exacerbate that fire system. Then we'll turn off our electrics. Again, if it's an electrical fire, we could bring that down to a limited fire if doing so. We're then going to turn our warning systems on, so our hazard lights warning other road users. We're then going to get our passengers off and to a safe place. Okay, so getting our passengers off and to a safe place. We're then going to call the emergency services. Don't expect people to do it for you, giving you a most amount of information we can. So our location, if it's possible. So for instance, on a motorway, if we can use the emergency phone, well, that will get our destination of where we are immediately to those help services. Once we've done that, we're going to assess the fire. If it's safe to do so, we'll attempt to tackle the fire. Not if possible, if it's safe to do so, because it might be always possible, it's not always safe. So if it's safe to do so, I'll attempt to tackle the fire if safe. Our next question could be, what fire extinguisher would be used to extinguish a certain amount of fire? So if we've got these fires, we're thinking about that warning triangle, okay? Now, three things to the fire triangle, obviously heat, fuel, and oxygen. So a number of fire extinguishers will eradicate certain things, okay? So what fire extinguisher would we not use on a fuel fire? Well, a fuel fire, we certainly don't want to put water onto it. So what fire extinguisher could we use? We would be using CO2, carbon dioxide, or our dry powder, okay? For a fuel fire, we could also use foam. This would work as well. What fire extinguisher would we not use on electrical? Well, we wouldn't want to be putting water on electrical because it could spark or cause nasty burns. So what could we use? Again, dry powder or CO2 carbon dioxide. Our next question is going to be, if we were driving down the road and our air compressor fails, how do we know? So air pressure on this vehicle, very important. The air on this system, for the handbrake alone, works differently to a car. So the air is keeping the brakes off. So if we didn't have air, those brakes are coming on. So it's very important that we have air. That's a very key thing to this little question here. So if we were driving down the road, how would we know? Well, first of all, if we were driving down the road, our warning system would come on. Okay, we can test this warning system. So if we notice our air gauges at the moment, when we're driving along regularly, they should be between kind of 8 and 9 bar. Okay, if I was to pump the brake pedal now, that air would then come out. And how would we know that warning system? There it is. The warning buzzer would come on. Now we've done 2 checks there. Number 1, I've made sure the air tanks are showing the correct gauge air pressure. And then we've also checked the air pressure warning system, okay, making sure that that's working. I can now start the engine up. By doing that, I'm now making sure the compressor is working. So now the air pressure will build back up again, and hopefully that warning system will go out. So if we were driving down the road and the air system fails, well, the first thing we would notice would the air tanks would drop. After that, our then warning buzzer would come on. Once we've noticed that, we need to pull over when safe to do so, okay? Because if we don't pull over, whether you like it or not, this vehicle is going to stop. Our next question is going to be, why is it important to remember the front and rear of the vehicle when turning? Alternatively worded, it could also be, what are the projections and protrusions of the vehicle? It sounds very challenging, but it's really the same question. So why is it important to remember the front and rear? What we're going to talk about is, what is it? Who can it hurt? How can I protect it? So first of all, what are the projections or overhangs of this vehicle? So from the front tyre to the front bumper, as you can see, is an overhang. Well, who can that hurt? Well, as I'm coming into a bus stop, it could hurt pedestrians or passengers waiting to get onto the vehicle. Other road users, roadside furniture, trees, buildings, scaffolding or lampposts. How can I protect it? Through the power of observation, I'm going to make sure the area is clear before I enter this area. Also, we've got to think about the rear overhang. So as we again said, what is it, who can it hurt, how can I protect it? From the rear tyre to the rear bumper is another overhang. Who is it dangerous to? Well, if we're turning quite sharply, we know the overhang kicks out. How can I protect it? By powers of using my mirrors and observation, again, I'll make sure that area is clear prior to that turn. Is there any other things that stick out on these vehicles? Well, yes, the mirrors, okay? And if we're thinking about coaches, we're thinking about those big mirrors. So these are another projection that overhangs. Who is it dangerous to? Well, people waiting at bus stops or service areas, we need to be very careful there. How can I protect it? Again, through the power of observation, making sure that area is clear before I enter it with the vehicle. Our next question is, where is the centre of gravity on this vehicle? Well, we need to word this 2 ways. We need to think about unloaded and then loaded. So unloaded, the centre of gravity, well, it's pretty even. It's not dead centre because our engine and gearbox is at the rear. So roughly about here. But then we need to think about our loaded centre of gravity. So remembering our passenger weights, remembering 15 passengers equals a tonne. So if we had 15 passengers sitting at the front of the vehicle, that centre of gravity is going to move. Alternatively, if those passengers are sitting at the rear, that centre of gravity is going to move. Now, why is this important to remember? Well, thinking about braking and steering, if we've got a lot of passengers and their suitcases at the rear of the vehicle, that could make our front axle very light, when in the event of heavy braking or steering, could be very dangerous. So this is the way we're going to word it. Unloaded, the centre of gravity, roughly about here. Loaded, anywhere between here and here, depending on where my passengers sit. We've got to get that point across to that examiner that we understand where our passengers and our suitcases are situated is going to grossly affect how this vehicle could handle, especially if we were a double decker and we had a lot of passengers sitting on the top deck, not too many on the bottom deck. Our next question is going to be, when getting into the vehicle for the very first time, what checks would be carried out? also worded as a cockpit drill. So when getting into the vehicle for the first time, there's kind of a routine we want to get to this, so it keeps it nice and uniformed. So getting onto the vehicle, as we step onto the vehicle, the first thing we're going to check is the handbrake and neutral, because you're not sure who parked this vehicle here. So it could be anyone. The handbrake might not be on, or the vehicle might be in neutral. So we'll make sure the handbrake and neutral. Once we've done that, there's no real specific order, but we're trying to keep it nice and uniform. So we're going to start from ourselves and work out, meaning I'll make sure the seat is nice and correctly adjusted and I can reach all my controls nice and clearly. Then I'm going to reach for my steering wheel, again making sure my steering wheel is correctly adjusted and it's nice and ergonomic. Once we've done that, I'm then going to work onto my dash system. So I'll turn on my isolator, turn my ignition on, and I'm going to check all my dash controls, making sure the warning lights come on and go out. I'll then start the bus up, making sure the only warning light that stays on now will be my handbrake warning light. Now that's quite a lot of checks we've done there. We've checked ABS, engine management, power assisted steering, lots of checks just by turning on that ignition system. Once we've done that, we'll make sure our air tanks rise up, again between 8 and 9 bar. Making sure our warning systems are working, making sure our safety guards are on, and then we can check our internal lighting. So making sure our internal lights are working and they're all illuminating, making sure they're doing their job. Obviously it's daylight now, but we could go into night time. Once we've done that, we'll make sure we've got enough fuel for the journey. If we're driving a long way, we've got enough fuel. And not just that, but we've got a means of paying for fuel. There's no point driving all the way to Scotland and then not being able to make it back because we haven't got the means to pay for that fuel. We'll make sure our horn is working, making sure our washers and wipers are working and they're all doing their job correctly, making sure my mirrors are correctly adjusted and I can see out of the vehicle, making sure I familiarise myself with the dimensions, height, weight, width and length, making sure we know this vehicle has a speed limiter. We know this from the Road Traffic Act. If it has one, it must be stated. So it says 56 mile an hour. How can we test it? We'll make sure it works on the motorway. Making sure all my doors and all my security systems are closed. Then I'll make sure my mobile phone is turned off and making sure everything is working. Obviously, if we were a coach, if we had a seat belt, I'll put that on as well. Our next question is what checks or changes would be done to this vehicle in extreme weather conditions? So this could be hot or cold. Let's start with cold. Now when we're thinking about cold conditions, we're not thinking about England cold, we're thinking of extremely cold. So again, the easiest way to do this is walk around the vehicle. So the first thing we're going to come to is our visual aid. So we've got our mirror. If we had heated mirrors, making sure they're working and they're warming up nicely. Then we're going to check our tyres. Obviously snowy, slushy conditions, we want to make sure we've got sufficient tread and we'll do our tread checks, making sure they're good. If we had snow tyres fitted, obviously making sure they're there as well. As we work around the vehicle, we'll think about our heating system, obviously passenger care and comfort, making sure our passengers remain nice and warm and nice and toasty. Again, more tyres, more checks, making sure, again, the checks on the tyres have been carried out. Then we're going to come to our rear lights. So we want to make sure all our rear lights are working. Obviously on a snowy day, we want to make sure we can be seen and recognised. So we'll have our lights on. We'll make sure our number plates are clean and clear. If we do get stuck in snow, we can be recognised by other road users. As we continue to work around the bus, we're going to come to our fuel system. So we're going to add an anti-waxing additive to prevent that fuel system going slushy, okay? Now, obviously, we wouldn't normally do that because it doesn't really get too cold in the UK, but we need to word it like that, okay? So putting our anti-waxing additive and making sure we've got enough fuel for the journey. Obviously, if we have heaters running and bits and pieces like that, our fuel usage could go up. And if we do get stuck, we could keep our passengers warm by means of that. Again, as we make our way down the vehicle, making sure, again, wheels and tyres are nice and clean and tidy. We've got sufficient tread for the vehicle. As we come down the other side, again, making sure more wheels and tyres. And then we're going to come to our little compartment at the front here. So again, we're going to come to the compartment and we're going to open it up. The reason we're going to open this one today is what we've got here is our batteries. Well, in extreme weather conditions, we could insulate our batteries. The first thing that normally breaks down on a vehicle in cold conditions, you go to start the car in the morning and it's flat because the batteries get a sharp snap of frost. The other thing we want to think about is our air tanks. And what we want to do is bleed the moisture from the system. That's just a little ring pull. And if we pull it to the side, we can evaporate that air out of the system. So why do we want to do that? Well, thinking about the air tanks, it stores air. What do we have in the air? Well, naturally, we've got moisture in the air. Obviously, on a cold day, if that moisture then freezes, that could block an airline and our brakes wouldn't work very well. So we need to remove that moisture to prevent freezing. As we then come around the front of the vehicle, we're then going to think about more visual aids. So again, checking our mirrors, they're clean and clear, they're not damaged in any way, and they're heated if possible. Again, more lights, more lenses, making sure our front lights are working and our front number plate. We'll then check our wiper blades, making sure they're clean and clear, free from defect. Our washer fluid is topped up sufficiently. Obviously on a winter's day, we use a lot more washer fluid because of that horrible salt that's all over the ground. Making sure our windscreen is clean and clear and free from defect, and obviously our demisters and blowers are working sufficiently. Okay, so cold conditions, there's quite a lot to remember there with that one, but again, remember the easy thing, walk around the vehicle. Now we're going to be thinking about hot conditions. Similar kind of things. So visual aids, again, when they're talking about hot conditions, we're not thinking of UK hot, we're thinking of extreme hot. So it could be sandstorms and stuff like that. So again, visual aids, our mirrors are nice and clean and clear, they're not covered in dust or sand. Our washers and wipers are working correctly. If we had air conditioning, we'll make sure our air conditioning is working, making sure we can keep our passengers nice and cool. If we don't have air conditioning, then we can open our windows to get a good ventilation through the vehicle. Our lights are clean and clear and all operational. Again, on a sandy, stormy day, making sure those lights are working. We need to make sure our air filter is clean and free from defect. It's not clogged up with sand and grit. The key thing with these extreme weather conditions is it's always an extreme weather condition. So extremely cold or extremely hot. And again, similar things for both questions. The visual aids, whether it's hot or cold, we always talk about visual aids. So our mirrors, our lights, our washers and wipers, and our screen is clean and clear. Our next question is going to be, we're making an extreme long journey, what checks would be carried out? Now this is on the basis that we might be on a new vehicle. So we haven't been on this vehicle before, and very often he might word that. So we're going to be getting onto a new vehicle, carrying out a journey, what checks would be carried out? So imagine we've never been on this vehicle before. First of all, I want to make sure I'm familiar with the height, weight, width and length, the dimensions of the vehicle. Then I could carry out my cockpit drill. Obviously I don't know who parked this here. Making sure I familiarise myself with the amount of fuel that's in the vehicle, and I've got enough means of paying for that fuel on that return journey. And again, head count, making sure we've got the correct passengers on the vehicle. Our next question is going to be, please carry out a daily walk around check. Now, this is a relatively easy one because we are allowed to use our walk around check sheet. And all we're going to do is go through the bits on the list. Okay, sounds very easy, but it's very easy to get distracted and go off on a tangent. So what we're going to do is just work our way through the list. The first thing on our list is our dash lights. So I'm going to get into the driver's area. I'm going to turn my vehicle on and start the engine. So checking my dash lights, again, making sure the warning lights come on and go out. So the only light that stays on now will be the handbrake warning light. If there was an ABS light on or a management light on, again, I know there's going to be a problem with the vehicle. Moving on from there, I'm going to check my brakes. Similar to what we done earlier for our compressor checks. So I'm going to make sure my air tanks are nice and full. I'm then going to pump the brake and remove that air from the system. Okay, that will then bring up my warning light. Once the warning light comes on, I'm then going to let the air tanks regenerate, so building that pressure back up again. Once we've done that, we're then going to turn the vehicle off. I'm going to walk around the vehicle listening for any air leaks. We're paying close attention to the wheels and tyres, okay? Not because we're listening to the tyres, but because of the braking system. Again, a lot of these vehicles have air suspension, so we're listening around the air suspension side of things. Around the rear engine compartment, because that's the closest we're going to get to the air compressor, which is what generates the air. As we come down the other side, again, those air tanks at the front of the vehicle, listening for the air tanks. So all of the wheels and tyres for the braking systems, the rear engine compartment for the compressor, and the air tanks. We're listening for any hissing, like a balloon leaking air. So we don't want any air leaks on this vehicle. Once we've done that, we're going to check our horn. Then we're going to check our washers and wipers, making sure they're working. Once we've done that, we're then going to check our mirrors. We're going to physically touch the mirrors, making sure they're clean and tidy, they're not damaged in any way, and because we have two, I need to check the other one as well. So again, they're clean and tidy, they're not damaged in any way, and they're doing their job correctly. Once we've done that, we're then going to check our speed limiter. Well, how do we know it's got one? As we know from the Road Traffic Act, it must stay inside the cab. So here it is up here, 56 miles an hour. Then I need to test that. Well, how can I test that? We're going to test it on the motorway. That's really the only way of checking these systems. We could have dash lights or systems like that, but that's not categorically a brilliant way of checking these systems because they might not be working. We're then going to check our height, weight, width and length, making sure I familiarise myself with all of the dimensions of the vehicle. We're then going to check our lights. So I'm going to make sure the ignition is on, I'll turn my headlights on, I'll turn my hazard lights on and my fog lights on. And then we're going to jump outside and make sure they're all working. As we check these lights, we're going to tap and check. What I mean there is they're not flickering, they're not damaged in any way, they're showing the correct light to the correct place. Now to save ourselves walking around twice here, I'm going to keep my sticker in front of me and I'm going to keep reading my way through. Well, I've come across a tyre, so I need to check my tyres as well. So while I'm here, save myself walking around twice, I'm going to carry out my tyre check. So I'm going to make sure there's no bulges, no cuts, ply or cord exposed. I'll make sure I've got sufficient tread, making sure there's 1 millimetre of tread over 3/4 of the radial circumference of the tyre, or 1 millimetre tread over 75%. 75% or 3/4, it makes no difference. Making sure we've got good tread then, making sure it's inflated. Now, how can we do that? Well, we'll just do a visual check of the vehicle, making sure it's not flat is what we mean. And then I can check my wheel nuts. We're going to use our T key to do this. And what we're listening for is a thud. If that wheel nut is nice and tight, it's a nice ping. If it's a thud, it's loose. If we had wheel nut indicators, I'll make sure they're pointing the correct way. Or if there was rust or signs of the wheel nut was breaking apart. So making sure they're nice and clean and tidy. Then we'll carry on working way around the vehicle. And what else have we got? So we've got another tyre, so another check. So again, carrying out a good check on the tyre, again making sure there's no cuts, bulges, ply or cord, making sure the wheel nuts are nice and clean and tidy, they're nice and tight, they're not damaged in any way. Now with this twin tyres at the back here, so I've got to try and inspect the rear tyre as well, but we don't want to go putting our hands down there because it's quite a small little spot and we don't want to be cutting our arms. So having a good inspection of the wheel and tyre, and if I needed to, I'll look down the rear of the vehicle to look for any debris between the tyre, cans of Coke, rocks or anything like that. As we then come to the rear of the vehicle, I can then continue to check my lights and lenses. So I'll be checking my indicators and again tapping and checking, making sure they're not damaged and they're showing the correct light to the correct place. Obviously I can't tap and check the top lights, but again make sure that examiner sees you checking them and he can see you observing them, making sure they're working. My little reflectors, making sure my reflectors are working here, they're not damaged, they're not cracked, and again they're okay. Then I'll check my exhaust system, just a visual check. What am I looking for? Well, there's no excessive smoke, there's no excessive noise, it's not dragging along the ground, it's nice and clean and tidy. We're certainly not going to kick it. Okay. As we continue to work around the vehicle, again, more lights, more lenses, making sure they're clean and tidy. The number plate is clean and tidy and working, and not forgetting those little number plate lights at the bottom there. As we continue to make our way round, more tyres, more checks. So again, having a good inspection of the tyres, good inspection of the wheel nuts, and a good inspection of that inner tyre as well, looking for inflation or any poor tread patterns, anything like that. As we come down the other side, another lens, another light, and again wheel nuts. Checking the side, again 1 mil over 3/4 of the radial circumference of the tyre. Then as we come to the front of the vehicle, I'm then going to inspect my wiper blade. So we checked them from the inside, making sure obviously their washers and wipers are working, but we need to check it from the outside. Again, checking the blade is clean and clear, it's not split or frayed, and it's touching the screen fully. More lights, more lenses. Again, they're working, they're doing their job. And our front number plate. Now, he's then going to ask you, have all lights been checked? And you're going to say, well, yeah, I think I have. don't forget your brake lights. Okay, we need to check our brake lights. Well, how could we check our brake lights? We might be on our own. Well, we could reverse up to something, okay, another vehicle potentially to look for a reflection, or we could put something heavy on the pedal and inspect it ourselves. Okay, once we've done that, we can then check our operator's license. Okay, we also need to make sure the vehicle is taxed and MOT. Well, how can we do that? We can go onto the government website, type in the registration and have a look at that. One last thing, work your way through the list again, just to make sure that everything's been done. So we'll check our dash lights, yes. Brakes, I've done that. My horn, yep. Washers and wipers, mirrors, speed limiter, height, width and length. Lights, I've done. Number plates, yep. Operator's license, tax and MOT. Tyres, I've done my full tyre check. All my wheel nuts are good. I've listened for any air leaks. My exhaust system, my visual check. Reflectors at the rear. Use the little card. It's there to help, okay? So when he says, let's do our daily walk around, use your card. It's there to help. So I hope this video has been a help for your Module 4 Category D CPC. If it's been good, please hit the like button. If you've got any questions, please come and see us at the nationaldrivingcentre.co.uk, and good luck out there.